Now that we have a general understanding of the two basic retail pricing strategies, let's talk about setting retail prices. A retailer's goal is to maximize their profits by setting prices on the basis of both price sensitivity of customers and the cost of their merchandise. So there's four main factors to consider when we start to set our prices. The first, of course, is yielding a profitable gross margin. We want to make more than what we paid to bring that item into our store. The second factor that I consider is customer sensitivity. What is my target market willing to pay for that product? I also consider competition. How are my competitors setting the prices on the same products? Do they set theirs higher or lower than mine? And the last thing I consider is legal constraints. And at the end of chapter 14, we'll talk about some of the legal constraints that the federal, state, and local governments put on pricing retail merchandise. So most retailers are going to set their price by marking up an item's cost and then adjust it based on the other factors. So we're going to start pretty basic here and talk about setting price on the basis of the cost of the merchandise. And then we'll talk about, at the end of this lecture, how we factor in sensitivity and competition and legal constraints. So when we set our retail price, this is the most basic equation that we could start with. Our retail price should equal the cost of our merchandise plus markup. What is markup? Markup is the difference between the retail price and the cost of the item. An appropriate retail markup is the amount that covers all of the retailer's operating expenses and still allows us to produce a profit. So let's use a basic example here. Let's consider a toy store that buys a stuffed animal from their vendor for $5 and then sells it to their customer for $20. The markup here is $15. So the retail price, what the customer pays, is $20. The cost, or what the retailer paid the vendor, was $5. So the markup is the difference between those two, $15. So we can express markup as a dollar amount, 15. We can also express markup as a percentage. And so you can see on here, the markup based on cost is 300%. And the way we get to that is we take our retail price minus our cost and we divide by the cost. So when we're looking at markup, markup is all based on the cost of the item. And we'll do a few more examples in just a minute. And then I also have a sample worksheet posted for you in the chapter 14 content folder so that you can do some practice on your own with this math. One thing to note about the markup percent is that the markup percent can be higher than 100. All right, and that'll become an important factor in just a couple of minutes. Retailers like to look at markup as a percentage as the retail price. And so a markup percentage equation is incredibly important when setting our prices. Markup percentage looks at the retail price minus the cost over the retail price. So now we're considering our markup based on price, not cost. So with our teddy bear example up above, we can take our same equation, our $20 price minus our $5 cost, but now we're going to look at that compared to the price. So we'll divide by the $20 retail price. So our markup percentage here is 75%. The markup percentage cannot be higher than 100%. The reason we use markup percentage to help us develop our retail pricing is because oftentimes retailers know, very generally speaking, what markup percentage they need in order to meet their financial goals and make the amount of profit that they want to make after paying for all of their expenses. So I have a few industry standards to share with you on markup percentage. So very generally speaking, the gift and souvenir market has a markup percentage of 92%. Women's clothing is generally marked up 75%, and kids' clothing and toys are generally marked up 45%. All right, so you can Google the markup percentage averages for the industry of just about any piece of merchandise, and you can determine what that is. So let's do a few examples using the markup percentage. Let's say we have a piece of merchandise that costs $75. If we mark it up $50, the retail price is $125. Right? So right now we're starting with our very basic retail price equation. Retail price equals the cost of the merchandise plus the markup. Now let's figure out what the markup percentage was. So I have the equation there on the left-hand side of the screen for you. The markup percentage is the retail price minus the cost divided by the retail price. So here's what that looks like. And if you do that math, you'll see that the markup percentage for this piece of merchandise is 40%. Let's put an actual product with the example here. Let's take this coffee mug, souvenir coffee mug. If I am a souvenir shop or a gift shop, I'm going to buy this coffee mug from my vendor for $1.15. Now, we know that the standard markup percentage for the gift and souvenir market is 92%. So now how do I determine what the retail price should be? I know the cost, I know my markup percentage, and now I have to determine the retail price. So I have the equation up here on the screen for you. The retail price is going to equal the cost of the item plus the retail price divided by the markup percentage. Confused yet? That's all right. Let's simplify it. Retail price equals cost divided by 1 minus the markup percent. So in this example, the equation would look like this. $1.15 divided by 1 minus 0.92. So you can see our cost of $1.15 in the numerator and our markup percentage in the denominator. So if you do that math, you'll find out that the retail price should be $14.39. Have you ever seen a coffee mug for sale for $14.39? Probably not. So what's the next step that the retailer takes? The retailer is going to round up and probably sell you that coffee mug for $14.99. So they're actually making even a little bit more profit than what they need in order to pay their expenses and meet their goals. Why is that okay? Because what happens if those mugs do not sell? At the end of the season, they're going to have to discount them, right? And so then they have to do a markdown. And we'll talk about markdowns a little bit later this semester, but let's always think back to this process when we get there. Let's do another example. Let's look at this pink t-shirt. If I'm Target, I probably buy this t-shirt from Hanes for $3.75. I know that the markup percentage for women's clothing is about 75%. So how much should I sell that shirt to my customers for? Well, let's remember our equation. Retail price equals cost over 1 minus the markup percentage. So your math should look like this. $3.75 divided by 0.25. So the cost of this shirt to the consumer, the retail price, is $15. It's not always this simple. Sometimes retailers have to adjust prices after that initial markup. So there's other factors they have to consider. Other factors that retailers have to consider when setting retail prices are workroom cost. Workroom costs include things like assembling a grill that they set out for sale or altering a suit that's purchased by a customer. Retailers have to consider competitor costs. They also have to consider those cash discounts from vendors. Remember the markdown money we talked about earlier this semester? That's considered when setting prices. And then we also have to think about our complementary merchandise and how that's priced. And finally, we have to talk about reductions and markdowns. So there's a lot of reductions that impact price, such as employee discounts, special promotions, end of season markdowns. And another thing we have to consider is theft and errors that happen in the selling process. And we'll talk about some of these reductions when we get to chapter 16 this semester in a couple of weeks. And so pricing is not as simple as setting down and doing a simple math equation for each individual product in your store. And so that's why most retailers use a pricing software to help them set their prices for their merchandise.